of your bulletin if you would like to follow along. It's John 18, verses 33 to 37. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this of your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Here ends the reading. Today is Christ the King Sunday. It is the last Sunday of the liturgical year, the last Sunday of the church year. And, we start Advent next week. A whole new year awaits us. This past church year, we have traversed the road from birth to death, from resurrection to ascension, from the Galilee to Jerusalem. We have visited various pieces of the Jesus story from the great men and women who sprinkle the heritage of Jesus. Now think about it. We just heard a couple of weeks ago about Naomi and Ruth, the great-great-grandmother and great-grandmother of King David, from whom Jesus is descended. We also heard about Hannah, the mother of Samuel, who would be the prophet who would anoint the child David to become the future king of Israel. Then there are the contemporaries of Jesus. There's Mary Magdalene. She never wavered in her faith. Peter, upon whom the church would be built. John the Baptist, from whom Jesus learned a lot about movements. When you think about it, you have one person, John the Baptist, easy to cut off the head of the movement. The movement then will dissipate. But Jesus sent out his disciples. He sent them out far and wide, all of them. And Jesus may have been crucified, but the Jesus movement did not die. Mary, his mother, who knew the pain, the excruciating pain and suffering that only a mother can endure, as her son was executed. James and John, the first fishermen who left all to become his disciples. These are but a few who knew Jesus and believed him to be the Messiah. They all played a part in whom Jesus is and what the name Jesus has come to mean. And then there were also people like the wise men. They knew who Jesus was. They saw his star rising in the east. And they came. They came to honor this little baby who would be King of the Jews. The blind man knew who Jesus was. Remember, he was the guy sitting on the side, and he saw, how did he see? He saw with his heart. He heard Jesus coming down the road. "Jesus, have mercy on me," he cried out, and they all were trying to shush him down. Remember him? And he refused to be placed in the margins any longer. And finally he goes, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And yes, Jesus called him forward. Yes. We have the children. The children knew Jesus in their innocence. Even the unclean spirit knew Jesus. "I know who you are," said the unclean spirit. "You are the Holy One of God." First part of Mark. Right off the bat, the unclean spirit knew who this man was. The women knew who Jesus was. The women who bled for years, all she wanted to do was touch his cloak, and she was healed. The Samaritan woman who challenged Jesus as she begged for her child's life. "Even the dogs get the crumbs under the table," she challenged him. "Your faith has made your child well. Go." The woman at the well who received the living water. "I want this living water," she said. Martha and Mary knew, for they believed Jesus to be the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. And let's not forget Mary Magdalene, who knew the voice of the risen Jesus in the garden when Jesus was resurrected from the dead, that morning so long ago, that Easter morning. All these people testify to whom Jesus is and how they have affected their lives. They are pointing to this man. They point to his kingship, for he is the king, not of this world, but another world. Now let's talk about kingship. I don't find that an easy word. You know, I have the earthly kings in mind, and they weren't always so terrific, let's face it. You know, they didn't mind if they, you know, power goes to people's heads. You know, and it was like, okay, off with your head. I don't like you anymore. Remember, who was it, Henry VIII? How many wives? I'm Henry VIII. How many wives did he go through? You know, it does. And, you know, but then I think about, he is the King of kings. He is the Lord of lords. His name is Jesus, 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 Jesus. Oh, he is the King. So we have that kind of king. So where's this king coming from? He's not an earthly king, obviously. No. Jesus, he was arrested, taken before Pilate. First, the high courts, the Sanhedrin, the high courts saw him. And Caiaphas, the chief priest, took him to the Roman governor of Judea, Pilate, to be judged and sentenced. And Caiaphas says, well, do it yourself. And he goes, we can't put people to death under Roman law. Only you can. Oh, okay. Well, the banter between Pilate and Jesus began. Bring him out here, says Pilate. All right, so he comes out. Are you the king of the Jews? Now, Jesus wanted to know if Pilate was asking this because he was curious, out of his own curiosity, or was he asking it because others had said something to him? You know I'm not a Jew, Pilate said. You know, your own high priest had handed you over to me. What have you done? And that's where it gets interesting, because Jesus answered Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. If it was, my followers would be out there fighting. They'd be out there fighting, keeping me from the Jews, keeping me from you, keeping me from any high courts. They'd be hiding me. I wouldn't be here talking to you. So you're a king? You say I'm a king, said Jesus. I was born for this kingdom, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. Woe, everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. The last line, which isn't part of our reading today, has Pilate asking, and I don't know if it was rhetorical or what. He comes back and says, what is truth? Pilate was used to running earthly kingdoms. He just can't let this guy Jesus run all over him. I mean, the guy obviously to Pilate was not clicking with all the cylinders or whatever, you know? And he couldn't look timid before his, Jewish constituency, no. No one really knows what Pilate was thinking, if he was afraid of losing face, afraid of losing some sort of power. And yet he has to condemn a man who proclaims himself as king of another world, a man whose power comes from God. And he talks back and forth like this bantering is going on. And one of those scholars that I read said, so who's really on trial here? Is it really Jesus? Or is it Pilate? Or is it really me? Or is it really you? And the questions that are asked, that word truth, those who belong to truth. So how do we see this man Jesus in our lives? Do we claim him as the king of our lives? Is Jesus the king? And if he's not the king, how do you describe Jesus in your life? How do you describe him?